Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. My name is Lizzie Payton. For those of you who don't know me, I am the director at Big Sky SNO, which stands for the Sustainability Network Organization. We work in the community to create collective action and collective impact by bringing community members together to collaborate and understand how we can better work together to improve our climate action in the community and our community resilience. So why are we here today? You got the invite. Thank you so much for coming. We're here to talk today about community resilience. Let's do just a quick popcorn. Tyson's gonna hate me for this moment because I didn't do microphones for this for everyone. Can anybody tell me what you think of when you think of resilience? Tolerating adversity, very good one. Surviving, also great. Adapting, I love that word, Jen, very good one. Looking toward the future, very accurate. So today our workshop's purpose is to talk about how we make sure we're thinking about those things for our community into the future. How are we adapting as our climate is changing, as our community is growing? How are we thinking about the environment in relation to the built environment? This map up here is from Headwaters Economics. They work a lot on community resilience, primarily in the wildfire space. As you can see, this is a picture of the entire state with all of the wildfire hazard. And you can see down here in our southwest corner where Big Sky is that we land in the high wildfire hazard area. Resilience isn't just wildfire. It's also making sure our environment thrives into the future in an adaptable capacity. That means we want to make sure we have a great water source. We want to keep our river healthy. That means we want to encourage growth from native species and remove as many invasive species as possible. That means we want to make sure all the wildlife that lives in Big Sky thrives as our community grows. Those are why resilience is important in Big Sky. This is a really cool map, although it's a little dark in the top left. If you are familiar with the Big Sky area kind of boundaries, it is this black line here. Within here, you can see a lot of wildfire likelihood, risks to homes, and risk reduction zones. So we're going to talk a lot about wildfire today, a lot about landscaping, a little bit about home hardening, and how you can get involved and take actionable steps into the future to make sure we can adapt as our community changes. Why is SNO hosting this? How many of you have heard of SNO before you came here today? Okay, great. So SNO works on climate action. In 2023, with over 40 community stakeholders, we published a community climate action plan. It lays out 4 targeted improvement priorities, which are energy and buildings, consumption and waste, transportation, and natural environment. Most of our conversation today is going to land in that 4th category. Why you're here today is our process is iterative with the community. We don't want to unilaterally say that this is the way things should go. We need to hear from you as property owners, as people who run owners associations, as property managers, as to what you're experiencing on the ground, what challenges you're seeing, and what solutions we can identify together to create a better, more resilient future for our community. This is just a brief look at our agenda today. We're gonna have a few different folks come up and present. They will introduce themselves and go through what they're gonna talk about. Our agenda today really focuses on, and I didn't break it down too minutely, but a lot of these blocks look a little big because they're 30 minutes. I tried to get the presenters today to stick to about 10 to 15 minutes. What I want to happen after that 10 to 15 minute presentation is I want you to be thinking about, during those presentations, what questions you have. How does this apply to your everyday life? And how do we find solutions going forward? There is no stupid question in this room. I am the queen of asking them, let me tell you. So do not feel silly, no matter what the question is, because there may be somebody in this room that has the answer, and if there's not, that means we can work towards an answer together and we can identify it as a problem that we can work together to create a solution for. So hopefully everybody got their free cocktail ticket, because at the end of this we'll have cocktails. We want to make sure this isn't just like a formal workshop, but also you get a casual way to engage after this, meet your neighbors, meet other people in the community who have similar concerns and like-mindedness. And honestly, throughout the whole thing, I'd like to just give the presenters a little heads up. If you feel compelled to ask a question in the middle of a presentation, don't hesitate to raise your hand to do so. Ideally, we are going to try to be speaking into microphones all day, so if you can take a pause while Milos and I bring you a microphone, that would be great. Which brings me to my last little bit before I turn it over to Jeff Kadri for Big Sky Fire Safety, is I'd like to give a shout out to Milos Shipman, who's in the back. He checked you in. He is our intern on sustainability for Big Sky, and we share him with the food bank and with the Gallatin River Task Force. He's been working with us, all three organizations, since last October, and he has really spearheaded organizing all this today. So let's give a really quick round of applause for Milos. And last but not least, I'd really love to appreciate everybody who made today possible. Moonlight Community Foundation, Yellowstone Club Community Foundation, and Big Sky Resort Tax all fund this operation. So you can pay a nominal fee to enter today, and we really appreciate you paying a few dollars to be here so you can participate in this conversation. It helps us a lot. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Kadri from, sorry, I skipped that, I did that wrong. I skipped insurance. There we go, I skipped myself. Is Noah here?
Yeah,
right here, great, thanks.
I thought I was getting off the hook. I was like, wow, this is going back to work. Let's do this. Thanks, Lizzie. Yeah, for those of y'all that don't know me, my name's Noah Sheedy. I own Latitude Insurance here in town. Latitude's an independent agency. We work with a lot of different carriers to obviously sell and try to support the community on insurance needs. I just kind of laid out, I figured, a few things to mention that maybe will spark some questions from y'all. Factors that kind of go into insurability, right? So if we step away from the community, obviously one of our biggest concerns in the community is wildfire in terms of insurability of our property, and specifically our homes. A lot of factors go into insurability, whether it's directly in our community specifically or just in general. But here, right, like we've got several things that I don't want to say play against us, but certainly make it finding property insurance, a little bit more challenging than other parts of the country. So high value homes, right? There's a massive concentration of high value homes here. It's funny, call it local homes that many of us live in. I would say outside of this community may be viewed as kind of more modest homes, but all of a sudden we're paying $1 million+, or if y'all were lucky enough to get in 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, they're at least worth $1 million now or more. You put that, every single home, townhome, condo that you look around the community, and every single one of them is $1 million+. That means that there's a lot of collective value, within our small area. That, in and of itself, makes insurance carriers kind of perk up, for sure. Especially when we're talking about wildfire risk that has the potential to not affect just one home as just very much a standalone insurance claim, but all of a sudden a kind of a catastrophic event. We've seen over the past several years several major carriers just essentially stop writing in the Big Sky area. So that certainly plays into it, just the concentration of value. Protection class. So there's this thing in the insurance world when we're dealing with protecting property and insuring property called protection class. That basically says how quickly, if there is some sort of issue that's going on at the property, how quickly and how likely is the emergency response able to get to the property, right? And then help out. Does anybody know how insurance started way back when on properties? Why it came about? What do you think the number one cause of claims is? At least if we look back 100 or 200 years.
Storm damage?
Actually, fire, right? Like everything was built exclusively out of wood. People had wood burning stoves in their home to heat them, and all of a sudden, you know, a spark happens, the thing goes up in flames. That's how insurance came about on homes, and that's certainly still one of the highest causes of claims is fire damage. So, you know, within the insurance world, insurance carriers look at what kind of protection class there is. It's 1 through 10, 1 being the best protection class, 10 essentially meaning unprotected. There are areas within our immediate vicinity that are listed as PC10s, right? Essentially, the insurance world considers them unprotected. If there's an issue at the home, at the property, it's not likely that emergency response is going to be able to get there quick enough with the adequate resources to save the property. Okay, so obviously that creates a challenge as well. Building costs, right? We don't have any major, well, anyway, at the very least, a lot of our materials are coming from Bozeman, a lot of times much farther away. Contractors, they are in high demand. If y'all have had to do anything on your own personal home and find a contractor to get that done, it's difficult. That raises the cost, supply and demand. You know, so that raises kind of a flag for carriers. We're a resort community. A lot of the properties in the area are short-term rentals. That also causes a red flag for insurance carriers, right? Like when you're renting out your home to someone you don't know and charging them money, and they're showing up just thinking they can have run of the roost, it creates more risk, right? And then obviously the overarching, you kind of have all of these, and the overarching then with the wildfire risk on top of it, you know, that all plays into our own personal insurability with our properties that we own here. So, you know, real quick, and I did include in the packets just a couple, you know, kind of infographics on a few of these things in terms of specifically wildfire risk and how we can help manage it. Defensible space, right? That basically means trying to create a barrier around your property that is not very likely to catch on fire, and if it does catch on fire, it's not going to get extremely hot where it can spread quickly. Obviously, it's kind of a radius. The closest things to your home you want to really harden the most, and then going farther out, just kind of thinning so that it doesn't spread close to your home in case there is a fire, a wildfire coming by. Building the home hardening within the industry is what it's called, right? Like wood is the most flammable. You know, can we use materials as we do remodels, as we build new, that is not quite as flammable, that you know, takes a little bit more energy to actually light on fire. That's a big one. And then, you know, as we talk about just insuring ourselves, insuring the properties we own or we touch as property managers, HOAs, etc. The other thing that plays into, you know, insurability is what is the owner's personal insurance record. If you have a lot of claims, probably the easiest one to understand on this level is auto insurance, right? What happens if you get into an accident or you have a bunch of speeding tickets? What's going to happen to your insurance premiums? They're going to go up, right? Exact same thing when you're insuring your home, or you run an HOA and you have to insure a condo or a townhome complex. The more claims that are on your record, it's more of, again, it's just one more red flag for the insurance carrier. Is this a risk that they want to take on? So that obviously goes beyond fire. I just mentioned that because really, like, hand in hand with with property claims and insurance, fire and water damage. Those are the two most common claims that are going to happen on a property policy. They make these things, that's a automatic water shut-off device. It basically installs into your main line of your home or property, and if it senses a leak, it will turn the water off automatically, so you don't have to actually recognize the leak to go down there and manually turn that main valve off. This I mentioned because more and more we are seeing, especially on high value homes that we insure in the area, this is an absolute requirement of getting to be almost every carrier now, is that the home has some sort of automatic water shut-off device. It's it'll, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, it'll be just like a requirement of having smoke detectors in your house, you know, having that alarmed water shut-off device. And I only mention that because, you know, it kind of leads me to my last point here, and hopefully, yeah, I'm doing okay. My last point in terms of insurability and kind of how we change our mindset around insurance is this is just a very generic infographic, but it lays out, and it's too small to see, but it lays out state by state insurance rates and how much they've gone up. Montana, this has 11.5%. This one that I grabbed was over the past 2 years. I would argue, in terms of what we see day to day in helping folks secure insurance, that's on the low end, right? Like, put your hand up if you want to. If you want to participate, you don't have to. But how many of y'all have Safeco as your home or condo insurance? And if you have Safeco, how much have you seen their rates go up? They're classic. You know, and it's, I won't get into the profitability of these insurance carriers because honestly, I don't look into it enough, but as someone that has to purchase insurance myself, when I see my rates go up, I'm like, they just want to make more money. And I'm sure they are probably making a lot more money off of us, but we also, you know, kind of, Lizzie reached out, you know, this morning with an email to maybe for me to speak to, you know, what happened in California with the wildfires and how that might impact the industry. The reality is, you know, the California fires, if those get wiped out, that happened, I mean, you know, billions of dollars in damages that the insurance carriers are going to have to pay out to help those communities get rebuilt as a whole. Those are real losses, and building materials, cost of construction, land, I mean, everything is getting more expensive, and when everything gets more expensive to replace, that is what insurance is, right? Like, insurance at its core is a hedge. You know, how much risk are you as an individual willing to take that a claim will or will not happen that will cost you money, and that's what insurance is covering. You know, with wildfire in our area, carriers look at our area as it's not an if, it's a when, and how much damage will there be. And that's ultimately one of the biggest things that affects our insurance rates and our premiums. But to this point, and what I was getting at with this kind of stuff and changing our mindset, it's not just about changing, you know, the hardening for wildfire. It's also thinking about, you know, when my parents, you know, when I was growing up and my parents were insuring the home, the deductible, I can only imagine what the deductible on homeowners insurance was back then, a couple $100s at the most. And if you had a $1,000 claim or a $1,000, you know, issue to the home, you're going to file that claim. That's what insurance was for. Now, I would say we try to go as high as we can with deductibles to keep the premium as affordable as possible, but also to try to change everyone's mindset that, unfortunately, especially in an area that's difficult to insure like Big Sky, for us it's not about carrying insurance for the small stuff. We pay for the small stuff out of pocket, because if we file those claims, again, it becomes that much more difficult to find insurance for ourselves come renewal time. But then also, if we do find insurance, it gets much more expensive. So, changing that mindset that, we're moving towards this model with property insurance, whether we like it or not right now, that, we carry insurance in case there is a wildfire and it damages our home, whether that's smoke damage or, actual fire getting to our property. So, yeah, there are definitely things we can do. We're still finding affordable coverage out there. I honestly haven't seen I haven't dealt with too many properties in the area that are effectively uninsurable. So that's a good sign, but we need to keep it up. And I know the community's putting in a ton of effort, I think we're doing great, and yeah, that's the insurance point of view. Lizzie, what do you got?
Well, I just want to say thank you, Noah, for presenting that. We kind of want Noah to come in as the insurance provider to frame the challenge that we're talking about here today. It's a huge part of the reason people are involved in this conversation, much more so than the other pieces of resilience. So we want to make sure we're addressing what we've received as feedback from the community as need. Noah did reference it, but there are, in your black envelopes, there's a packet that will follow along today. We'll have all the information. There's a half sheet in there for you to take notes. My question for you, Noah, is first of all, I'd love to open it up to everybody. I'm going to start with a question. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Milos will come to you with a microphone, or I might. But just thinking about what you just learned, what questions do you have that pop up for Noah? My first question is, what insurance providers are you seeing that are doing a good job of communicating and problem solving with their clients versus insurance providers who are just stepping out entirely? And make sure to raise your hand if you've got questions.
Yeah, good question. As an independent agency, like I said before, we work with a lot of different insurance carriers, and I feel like in this day and age, that's really important because every insurance carrier seems to have their own niche of what they really, that kind of their sweet spot of what they like to play in terms of location, insured value, makeup of the property, that kind of thing. I will say there's a local carrier that's relatively small. Local, I mean, they're the state of Montana. They're called Flathead Farm Mutual. We've had a lot of really good success on the kind of quote-unquote lower insured value. This is like $1 million and less is kind of the sand bucket they like to play in, but they're from Montana, so they know the state very well. They're not scared necessarily of a protection class 10 or a protection class 9, where there may not be a fire hydrant close by. They're, maybe outside of that 5 or 10 mile envelope of kind of the sweet spot for the fire department to respond. They're not necessarily scared, and they may make sure that there are protections in place in those kind of property situations. But the positive thing is they don't necessarily just jack the premium rate up because of one of those things. So yeah, there are definitely carriers, and look, all of them, this is their livelihood. So if they just get out of the market completely here in Big Sky, they're not making any money, and that's, insurance carriers are there to make money. So I think the vast majority of them that we've seen are trying, at least in their own little sandbox that they want to play in. They're trying for sure. Yellowstone Club and Lone Mountain Land have done a great job. Kudos to them for taking the initiative to bring a lot of these carriers out here and host them, to show them Pano AI and to show them the fire department and how much energy and training and facilities they've got going on. So, there's a lot of good going on, and we're going to continue to, try to fight as best we can. Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry about that. Thanks for being here and taking the time. My name is Max. 2 questions. One relates to my role on the board of an HOA. Yeah. How should we be directing or working with our property managers in terms of what to think about as it impacts insurance for upgrades, remodeling, landscaping, that type of stuff? That's question number 1. And question number 2, and you kind of answered it with the YC, Low Mountain Land example, what can we as a community be doing to make your job easier, meaning more carrier options for the community?
Yeah, two great questions, Max. So yeah, I'll just go in reverse here. What can you all be doing as an HOA? You know, I would say the hardest thing these days is carriers are looking so much more closely at every property and every policy. Man, it is, turning around a quote is sometimes the hardest part for us. It takes these guys are overwhelmed at these carriers with the amount of additional legwork and investigation they have to do before they actually are willing to write a policy. So I'd say more than anything, time, right? Like if you're either getting a notice of non-renewal or you know that those premiums are gonna go way up, you know, the more time that you can give us as agents to try to shop it and give the carriers time to respond to us, that's probably number one thing you can be doing. And then your first question, you know, just as an HOA, what can you be doing to your property to make it more insurable? Was that the summary, Max?
Or how do we direct our property managers to help us make better decisions?
Yeah, great. So how do we direct the property managers to, you know, basically make the HOAs more insurable? I mean, again, I think a lot of it is out of our control because of just the area we're in and the wildfire risk. But so the things that are in our control, look, you know, from an HOA, whether it's our own personal policy or these massive $100 million plus HOA property policies, it all comes down to, as the property owner, how insurable are we? What kind of claims are we filing? Are we kind of setting ourselves back for putting in claims that, you know, really in the end are just going to make it more expensive for us from an insurance point of view long term? It's always that short term versus long term gains. So I would say, you know, more than anything, yes, keeping up all the normal things. Deferred maintenance is a killer. If you guys have heard of the, you know, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac condo association blacklist that's out there. If you haven't, that probably means whatever HOA you're a part of isn't on that list, which is fantastic. But there are quite a few HOAs and COAs in this community that are on the blacklist. And mostly it's because of deferred maintenance that, you know, needs to get done. The problem that we see here is we have a lot of high value associations, townhome and condo complexes that replacing a roof is, you know, $8, $10, $12 million investment that, you know, every single one of us as property owners has to pick up that tab, and that's a hard pill to swallow for a lot of us, and those assessment fees. But, you know, the more we can be proactive about that maintenance, you know, around here, roofs need to get replaced. You know, every 15, maximum 20 years, or else you're going to fall into that deferred maintenance category. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. No, my name's Jordan. Just a quick question on the automatic water shut.
Yeah.
What's the advantage on the automatic water shut off? Seems a little counterintuitive to be shutting the water off, and folks have automatic sprinklers set up for fire.
Yeah, good question. So to summarize, you know, what's the advantage of the water shutoff devices? Yes, if there's automatic sprinklers, things like that, that obviously it would get put on a different line. But the big thing is, again, we have to look at not just ourselves in terms of, you know, how we take care of our property, but just as a whole in insurance. What are these carriers seeing as big claims? Water damage, and that's from leaks, right? Like a pipe bursts, it leaks, it's not caught immediately. So these water shutoff devices are very specific to, you know, their leak detections. And so, you know, you're avoiding those big damages from just water leaking for a long time before us as a property owner, or as property managers, are the properties that we manage that are second homes that may be vacant for a period of time. I mean, that's where these really save us, and that's why the insurance industries are pushing these more and more, is to stop those very expensive claims. Yes, sir.
Just mention a quick thing. If you're on the Big Sky sewer and water system,
Yeah.
you can set up daily notifications. So if it sees your water use go up above your average, you can notify.
Yeah, that's awesome, Ken.
So it's sort of almost like a backup.
Totally, agreed.
Noah, would you mind repeating that into the microphone?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Ken was just saying if your water's on water, Big Sky Water and Sewer, you can set up daily alerts for water usage, so you can actually see if there is a spike. Obviously, that typically is going to mean you have some sort of hidden leak that you haven't seen yet. So yeah, that's great.
Sorry, I didn't get back to your last email. I just did.
Hello,
Got it.
Simon Stratford, Stratford Tree. We met with Jeff actually a few weeks ago. We started, you can tell from my accent, in the UK and then France. We're in Florida at the moment, and we're moving up here to start May/June. So we're dealing with insurance industry in Florida. The rates are there are huge. Biggest problem from our side of the things is the tree industry and the failure of trees in heavy winds. So what we've done is sort of reverse engineered the issue for the insurance companies and what it is that could take mitigation from the high rates. So we introduced or found AI-assisted loading analysis on the trees, which has been very successful in mitigating those insurance points. But looking up here with fire, one of your limiting resources obviously is water. So you're dealing with drought and water deficits. So we look at the tree. Two main causes of deaths in trees are carbon limitation and loss of hydraulic connectivity. So that basically means not getting water up through the system, so it can't actually photosynthesize, and then you start losing carbon accumulation and then death, which then presents a hazard. So then we look at what actually enables that system to work properly through the hormone availability in the plants. So am I correct in assuming that the biggest factor for you is trees for fire?
100%, right? Like a carrier, when we submit a risk to a carrier, the first thing we're going to give them is the address. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at that, they're going to Google that address and look at the satellite image. And if you look at a broad stroke satellite image of an area, it's just a whole bunch of matchsticks all over around these multi-million-dollar properties. That's what it looks like to an insurance carrier who's out in Ohio, sitting behind a computer, right? So the Pano AI that the Yellowstone Club has, and then at the resort on Lone Peak as well, like those kind of initiatives from a community perspective are massive in terms of helping, and we've seen it a few times with Pano AI respond very quickly. I'm sure Jeff knows that extremely well, right? Like it's, so we have, again, like this community is taking some amazing proactive steps to try to manage any kind of wildfire that may happen here. But for sure, trees are 100% the biggest reason behind our wildfire score, for sure.
So we have the ability now to measure the uptake through the vascular system and tell when it drops
Well, that's great.
remotely. So
Cool.
yeah.
That's awesome. Nice.
All right. We'll do Janelle, and then this is going to be our last question because we need to roll to the next presenter, but we do have coffee break and time to chat about other questions. So.
I was just wondering what percentage of Big Sky owners have earthquake coverage? And I was surprised to learn recently that our earthquake coverage does not include earth movement.
Correct. Yeah, good question. So, this is 100% a shot in the dark in terms of what percentage of Big Sky residents have earthquake coverage, but if I had to guess, I would say, certainly less than 5%. I think, yeah, a very relatively low percentage. And yes, there is a very specific within the insurance industry definition of what an earthquake is, and earth movement is not necessarily earthquake. So, you know, if there's an earthquake, you know, let's say down at Hepkin Lake, and it's large enough in magnitude that it kind of affects the Big Sky area, and let's say it shakes our home but no damage is done, but we're on a hillside and that earthquake shakes off land somewhere off in some kind of distance, and that land moves and hits us, that is not considered earthquake damage. That's considered earth movement. So there is two big differences there for sure. Yep.
Great question and great answer that I had no context to before this moment. Thank you so much, Noah. Give it up for Noah. Next, we will move on to Jeff Kadri from Lone Mountain Land Company. And he is going to talk about community wildfire safety as a whole, and then he'll be followed up by Mel Crichton, and he will talk about the Neighborhood Ambassadors Program. So I'll let Jeff take it away.
Thanks for that, Lizzie, and thanks for that, Noah. I've been involved with some of those insurance talks at Yellowstone Club, Lone Mountain Land Company, and it's been interesting, and I still don't understand insurance. I'm still figuring that out. And from my perspective, I'm always trying to push these companies to say, like, what do we need to do to get insurance? And I want this list, and it turns out it's just so much more complicated than us getting a list. Because it just all depends, to their credit. You know, it depends on where you live, what your home's built out of, what trees are around, and it's all site specific. So I'm going to get into what you can do in terms of wildfire, in terms of home hardening, and then also creating defensible space around your home. So, well, just to kind of walk you through, I'm going to talk a little bit about wildfire behavior, how those fires react in the landscape, and then how those fires interact with our homes on the landscape, and then finally, how you can prioritize what you can actually do to harden your home and harden your homeowners associations. So yeah, I work for Lone Mountain Land Company, so I didn't really introduce myself. I'm an environmental manager, I'm a forester, noxious weeds manager, wildlife education person, do all things land management, but inevitably with the forestry side of things, I do a lot with wildfire and working with homeowners to be more prepared and plan for all of this. So, wildfire, 3 main factors that really influence wildfire behavior: fuels, weather, topography. 2 of those things we can't change. Well, Lizzie maybe would argue with you. We can maybe change the weather long term, but in a fire, weather, topography, we can't change those things. Fuels are the only things that we can really influence to affect wildfire behavior. Traditionally, I've always thought of fuels as, you know, this picture in the middle. Trees, what's on the landscape. But one other thing to really think about, especially in this room, is what kind of fuels your homes are built out of. That makes a huge difference in if your home survives a fire or not. So let's jump into it. How do homes burn in a wildfire? 3 main ways. Don't feel like you need to read all of these, but ember ignition, the most common way that a home lights on fire. So this is when a fire is burning the landscape, burning a tree. Typically that tree, when it torches, emits embers into the landscape. Sometimes it can be as wild as like an explosion. You literally see trees explode, embers fly in the air. Back to that weather concept, a lot of times, especially these catastrophic wildfires are driven by wind. Those embers can go over a mile in distance, land on your roof, light your home on fire. So over 80% of homes that burn in wildfires are that ember ignition. So that's the biggest thing to really think about when we're hardening our homes, hardening our landscape. The other 2 ways, surface fire, direct flame. This is like traditionally what I'd always thought about. Wildfires is this big flame front that comes right up to your house, engulfs your home, and that's how your home burns, but not as likely as that ember. And then the last one, radiant heat. Really, if you've seen some of these pictures from the LA fires, radiant heat was a big one. These homes, especially when they're so close together, the heat from the one home burning lights the next home on fire. So those are our 3 ways. We really want to focus on this ember ignition. I think if we're prepared for that ember ignition, these other 2 variables are less likely to happen. So This is a nice little schematic, and I have a better video to really illustrate this, but these are kind of the 5 things that I think, especially as HOAs, we should be focusing on. Our eaves, our roofing materials, our siding, our windows, what's up against our house, and then also decks. But this video, I think, can illustrate this.
We have to go to the, just click the red
Got it.
button on there.
There we go.
So
couldn't
from
see
start
that.
to finish, we're going to start with our ember generators, which we use to recreate a realistic ember exposure. Embers are those small burning and smoldering particles that may travel ahead of the fire front. And what we do with our generators is we create the realistic exposure, and in our wind tunnel, we're able to throw them at a building. And then we have a building that has 2 sides to it, a good side which uses wildfire resistant construction, and what we're considering a typical building that we would see in a wildfire prone area.
Nothing happening on the good building material.
Exactly as we expected, that mulch on the ground there caught fire from the embers. The fire from the mulch burned up under this deck, and this whole deck was on fire. And so this fire on this deck caused flames right against the home. And then if we look there at the base of the door, it was actually the flames from this deck that burned through the bottom of the door, and on the inside of the house we started to see smoke and flames. And so because this deck was a combustible material attached to the building, when the embers led to the ignition of this deck, we got flames inside of the building. Here we are on the wildfire.
I think that video explains this better than I really can, but this is a facility, I want to say it's DC area that they have. This is the Institute for Insurance of Homeowners and Business Safety, IBHS. Great resource out there. They do a ton of research on really all natural disasters, and they're really leading the way on things like building materials and how we can better prepare for natural disaster events. But pretty
So
cool.
from start to finish,
There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to go over those kind of 5 things that I just listed out in the slide before. And this is a brief overview, but I would encourage you all, if you want more information, especially specific to your subdivision, your homeowners association, take one of these. There's a QR code in the upper left-hand corner, and that leads you to a site to schedule a site visit with Big Sky Fire Department. They can come do a site assessment and really get into the nitty-gritty on where your biggest vulnerabilities are. But briefly, I'm just going to touch on things. Roofing. This is probably the biggest hazard that we have, but it's also like the most expensive thing to really tackle, right? What material you have on your roof makes a huge difference. When those embers land on a cedar shake shingle roof versus a Class A roof, it can make all the difference. So Class A is the biggest standard. That's when we are replacing roofs. That's what you want to be shooting for. And so obviously Class A is more expensive than the other ones, so something that maybe takes a little more planning long term, especially with these HOAs that have quite a few homes under it. And then roof vulnerabilities, thinking about where debris can collect on your roof can make a huge difference. So when you have complex roof designs, like some homes do have in Big Sky, taking extra caution to clean out those areas, also adding things like metal flashing can make a big difference in terms of vulnerability. And then gutters. Gutters, this is a big thing and starts a lot of homes on fires. So cleaning those gutters and really thinking about the timing of year when you clean those gutters is huge. I think this is a big checkbox for a lot of HOAs to do, but if you're doing that in, let's say, this time of year, and then needles collect all the way through up until July, August, when we have our fire season, it may not make a difference. So maybe consider the timing of when you clean those gutters to be right at the beginning of fire season. Could make a big difference. Vents. This is a great place to start. It can be a really cheap and effective way to home harden. Especially these vents that sit at top of our roofs, have access into our attics. Embers can come in through those vents, so a simple fix is to put an 1/8" mesh metal covering over those vents, and that can make all the difference in embers getting inside your home and or versus not. Siding, another big one, non-combustible siding. It can cost a little bit more money, but it's worth all of that effort as these embers come in, especially, you know, thinking about your reclaimed wood that maybe has knots where those embers can land. Not a great thing to have. And then that bottom part of this little cartoon is having material at the bottom of your siding that's non-combustible. So whether it's concrete or rock skirting, non-combustible material makes a big difference. And then also that gravel ground cover, which we'll cover a little bit in a sec here, also makes a big difference. If that is all grass and the ember lands there, really easy for that to light on fire and lead up into your siding. Windows, double pane is the way we want to go. Single pane is just more likely to break open, and once you have a window that breaks in a wildfire, that's a really good way for embers to get inside your home. Decks, another big one. I feel like every home in Big Sky has a deck. So the materials that your deck is made out of makes a huge difference. So composites, hardwoods are better than softwoods in terms of decking material. And then also actually having a larger gap between your boards makes a difference, so the embers can actually fall through rather than accumulate. And then flashing, where your deck meets your home, adding flashing can make a huge difference. Mel is going to talk after this. He's done a really good job on his home and kind of retrofitted that. And so that can be a really easy place to start for some of this work. Cool, and then I can't not talk about trees, being up here as a forester. So defensible space, another big thing. The fuels that lead up to your home make a huge difference. So this is kind of the standard for defensible space. We break it up into 3 zones typically. Your immediate zone, that first 5 feet from your structure out, is very important that there's no or little combustible material. So as you saw in that video before, that bark mulch lighted right on fire, whereas the other side had the rock mulch. It makes all the difference. So that can be another great place to start. And I live in Hidden Village, I'm on our landscaping committee, and that's what we're working towards in all of our structures, is creating rock skirting instead of having grass come right up against our homes. So that's the first 5 feet, no combustible material. The next 5 to 30 feet, that intermediate zone, we can have some trees, we can have some shrubs, but really creating a lot of space. And you know, this is a typical zone that we landscape in a lot. If we are landscaping, we do want trees, going with hardwoods. So aspens, great tree, native, we see it all around, they do really well. Narrowleaf cottonwood's another option, they do pretty well in this environment, as well as choke cherries. Maples, not so great in the Big Sky area. So what you plant is very important, and then as you keep going out, we can have a few more trees, but really creating crown spacing between those trees. I think this cartoon illustrates it pretty well. You know, first 5 feet, no trees. That next 5 to 30, we can have trees 18 feet. I always just say the more space you can have between your trees, the better. And that measurement is from green to green. So not bowl to bowl, but actually where that crown of the tree goes to. And one thing I like about this graphic is it doesn't have to be just single trees. Like let's say you like a really nice group of trees somewhere. You can keep that group, maybe cut the dead ones out of there, but just make sure there's a lot of space between those. Cool. So that's the gist of it. I could talk for hours on this stuff, but yeah, we'll end it there.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Well, Jeff just gave you the 5-minute version of what we spent an hour and a half presenting about 4 weeks ago. So if you want to see the entire presentation that was at Warren Miller, go to just Google FABS presentation, F-A-B-S presentation. There's the entire thing on video. And I guess I have to, well, I'm going to need this. Oh,
Press the little to the right button.
okay. So, I run or I shouldn't say I run it, they run me. I coordinate the neighborhood ambassadors in Big Sky. There are 23 now to handle 80 HOAs. So we still are a little shorthanded with what we wanted to do is have a neighborhood ambassador in each HOA, but we're not there yet. But we've only been in business for a year. So we've gone from 4 to 23. Most of them are in training right now. But an ambassador qualification is you gotta care about your neighborhood. You've gotta be active enough to know what's going on. You gotta know your neighbors, or enough of them that you can talk to them comfortably. You're gonna be a source of help for hardening and evacuation. So you're gonna have to work with your HOA board if they'll have you. Jeff knows what this is about. And you're gonna be in contact with at least John Trappo, the fire department, probably a lot more than that. And then there's the Greater Yellowstone Fire Action Network. So what do? We basically just work with our neighbors to help them understand mitigation, tree spacing, rocks around the house, all that. We also help them on evacuation to get their homes and their cars and their family ready to go if we do have a wildfire alert. And we make sure that everybody in the neighborhood is signed up for the Everbridge program, which is on the back of the Wildfire Action Guide. You can QR code link that. If you don't do anything else today, make sure that before you get out of here, you're signed up for that. Because you'll get an alert telling you it's time to evacuate or when to evacuate and who's affected. We're gonna discuss evacuation in great depth in another presentation on June 23rd. And at that point, we'll have the sheriff and the fire department and the county all involved in telling you this is how it works. The fire department has a fuels crew. So if you decide you need to if they come by, the fire department gives you an evaluation saying this is your risk, this is where you're gonna have some problems with fire, you can ask them, is the fuels crew available? Because there is a crew of about 9, I believe, who work for the fire department, and they come to your property, they clear away all the vegetation that's gonna catch fire, they create those defensible spaces around your house, and there are grants available to help you defray the cost. So you'll have to talk to the fire department to see when they do the evaluation, can you get on that list? Smoke education is the last thing. We'll also cover that in June. We're not going to talk about that right now because we're more worried about the home site. So we do have ways to reach you. We've got the monthly column in Explore Big Sky, which you may have seen already. It's going to come out in print tomorrow. We also have we're putting together 2 websites, one website for the Fire Adaptive Big Sky, and also a Facebook site, so you can go online, ask questions, and have everybody see the answers. So it's going to kind of like a community question and answer. So we've already done presentations for realtors so that they can help you list your home to make it look more attractive fire-wise. We're going to be working with property managers to make sure that those renters know what's going on, and that the owners who are not there realize that they've got to spend some money for mitigation. And finally, well, I said all that. So you've got the Wildfire Action Guide. It's only 8 pages long. Just read it, okay? If you don't do anything else, it gets you a really good start. And the very last page is evacuation. And like I said, June 23rd, we're going into great depth on that to help you understand that there's not just one way in or out. We're gonna have a lot of choices. So right now we've got 18 neighborhoods with 23 ambassadors. So we've got quite a bit more to cover. So like I said, we'll do the evacuation part closer to wildfire season, and we'll be dealing with wildfire smoke and evacuation, those kinds of issues. I think that's it. I made it real quick. Wait, hang on a second. I've got a couple more notes. First off, on insurance. The Montana legislature has passed one bill, and the governor signed it, that allows insurance companies to give you a discount if you do all this. And previous to that, insurance companies weren't allowed to give discounts. The other one that's still in the Senate, it started in the House and it went to the Senate, and now it's in for a final reading, deals with asking the insurers, enforcing the insurers to give you their risk rating. If they say you can't be insured, they're gonna have to tell you why and give you their numbers. Also, wood piles. Jeff didn't mention, if you got a wood pile on your deck or on your front porch, during wildfire season, expect it to burn. Because the embers will get in those little nooks and it's gone.
Insurance carriers will drop you for that, actually.
Yeah. And
Sorry, I'm just gonna repeat what Noah said. Insurance carriers will drop you for having wood piles too close to your house.
Yep.
If they inspect, they'll first tell you to move it.
If they
you don't-
inspect.
If you don't move it, they'll drop you.
Okay.
Yeah. And finally, Lisa's here from Big Sky Owners Association. To make all these changes on your property is not going to require a submittal and review if the changes are not major. And I'm not going to say anything more about that because I know they haven't really published it yet, but basically you're going to be allowed to make these changes if you're in BSOA without going through the approval process. Okay, and now Jeff, I think we have 1 minute for questions and answers.
So go ahead and raise your hands for questions. Jeff, if you wouldn't mind popping up with Mel, and Milos and I will bring around.
Yeah, this is Kent. I was wondering if you could comment on what % of Big Sky is covered by fire hydrants, and the areas that are covered, is the flow rate high enough to actually make a difference?
I can't answer the first question. We'd have to ask somebody from the water company. But I know that when we had the fire up at Moonlight, just fighting that one house fire, the water pressure really got low in the neighborhood. So one thing you don't want to do, I know they say turn your sprinklers on when you evacuate. You may not want to do that if you're going to be robbing the pressure. Go ahead, Noel.
All I was going to say is shout out to the Big Sky Fire Department, because you can go on their website. It's, as an insurance agent, I use it all the time. They have a map. It'll show you exactly where every hydrant is within the Big Sky Fire District and whether it's pressurized or what type of hydrant it is. It's an amazing resource, and I can tell you not enough of our community is on hydrants. From an insurability point of view, the carriers aren't sophisticated enough to understand whether the water pressure is high enough in case there is an issue. They just want to know that there's a pressurized fire hydrant within 1,000 feet of that property, and if there is, you're feeling real good about your insurance.
You know, one thing related to that happened in the LA fires was these hydrants ran out, right? Well, these hydrants are more suited for structural fire than they are for a wildland fire. You can't rely on our hydrants to really be putting out a wildland fire, especially in these catastrophic conditions. It's a great question.
Other questions? Or information from your experience that has maybe good to share with others?
One thing we've been working on as neighborhood ambassadors is to get together a crew of volunteers to help neighbors move their wood piles. A lot of people want them next to the house in the winter, but come July, that better be at least 30 feet from the house. So not everybody's not gonna hire a contractor to move a wood pile, and you might be lucky enough to find some laborers, but it's to the neighborhood's advantage, not just the homeowners, but the entire neighborhood, to get that wood pile a heck away from the house, because if one house catches fire, it just increases the odds that another one will catch fire.
One thing I forgot to mention is that wildfire action guide that Mel was talking about, should you all have in your packets, page 4 or 5 has this great cartoon that talks about home hardening and really breaks it down into what your priorities should be, and then also kind of listing relative pricing on that. great place to start if you're wondering, what should I do?
Jeff, this is a question for you, and it's a little bit into the forestry piece. As we have a bunch of HOAs in the room today that are adjacent to forest property, is there anything they can be doing to leverage their influence with maybe the National Forest Service to talk about what that kind of liminal space is between what the Forest Service manages, what they're managing, and then their property owners are managing?
It's a great question, kind of a loaded one. But to best answer that, the Forest Service is really well aware of that and the impacts, and just a little bit on firefighting is we have an agreement right now in the greater Big Sky area that when a wildfire does start here, the Forest Service takes over jurisdiction within 24 hours. So they will be here, they will be part of that fire. So part of that, and they have this agreement with a lot of communities around the U.S., is they realize the fuels on their side of the fence affects what the liability and risk is on the other side of the fence. So there's the Good Neighbor Authority. The more homeowners that come together, the better on this front, but there's funding available to not only mitigate fuels on their side of the fence, but also do it on your side of the fence. And I believe it's more of a cost share than it's them doing all the work. So that's something to really look into, reaching out to the Custer-Gallatin National Forest and working with them. On the other side of it too, they're very active, the Forest Service, both the Beaverhead Deer Lodge and the Custer-Gallatin come to the table in our fire adapted Big Sky group. So they're here, they come, we meet every couple months and just talk shop on what's coming down the line and where our vulnerabilities are. So it doesn't answer all of it, but.
No, that was good context. I think transitional space can sometimes be a challenging thing because somebody doesn't think it's their responsibility and it gets lost in conversation. And again, wildfire doesn't know property boundaries, so if you're not working together, it's missing the point. Anybody else? Other questions? Okay. Well, great. That means we have made it about just over an hour and it's coffee break time. We will be reconvening at 2:30, so that actually gives you 25 minutes. These guys are here for questions if you want to ask them some questions. Intermingle with everybody, get to know each other, and talk casually about what we've been learning today. There's coffee up here, there's tea and lemonade back there, and then there's just bathrooms out and to the left. And I'll give you guys a 5-minute warning at 2:25, and then we'll go into Alpenscapes, talking about landscaping specifically, and then we're gonna do breakout groups. So thanks, guys. All right, guys, you get to listen to my dulcet tones a few more minutes because I'm gonna present us as Alpenscapes partnership. I think Jess is coming back from a quick bio break, but I would like to introduce Jen Moeller, who runs Grow Wild. She's a pretty rad human. You've probably met her on the streets. She's probably talked to you about native species or invasive species, and you've probably asked her 17 gardening questions. And walking up here to also join us right now is Jess Olson from the Gallatin River Task Force. She leads their water conservation efforts, and we are 3/4 of what is the Alpenscapes partnership. Unfortunately, our Big Sky Fire Department cohort is in Helena today working on some wildland-urban interface legislation, which is why Jeff also, I didn't give him kudos earlier. Jeff found out that he was gonna present last night at like 7 p.m. So let's give a round of applause to Jeff, because he pulled a solid and stepped in for John Trapp, who is Big Sky Fire Department's outreach something. Anyways, our 4 organizations are a partnership that make up Alpenscapes, which we consider Big Sky's go-to resource for creating appealing, alpine appropriate landscapes that are fire safe, water wise, and ecosystems resilient. Okay, so we're getting back to that resilience, I guess friendly, same concept. We work together to create fire-safe, water-wise, and ecosystem-friendly future. Again, we get back to that resilient concept of a future. We have a website called alpenscapes.org that you can visit. It has a ton of tools that are employable for you to apply to your property and as owners associations for you to reference and input into your CC&Rs or architectural guidelines. I want to give a shout out to Emma Lawler in the back. A couple years ago, she worked her butt off at BSOA on creating and incorporating a lot of the Firewise landscaping into BSOA's bylaws. It was a big lift. I know changing bylaws is a challenge for a lot of owners associations, but it is doable. I'd also like to shout out to Jeff Cadry for running like the Lone Mountain land shift across all properties on really incorporating a lot of the defensible space, water conservation, and ecosystems focus into their guidelines for landscaping. So yeah, they've been awesome. Our challenge is really with changing climates and increased wildfire risk, threatened water quality and supply, the spread of invasive species, which does also affect all of our fauna. So every piece of wildlife you see is impacted by what is growing here in Big Sky. We really see a lot of ongoing development, and that creates challenges because we have the built environment and the natural environment. And we need those things to work really well together, so it needs to be a focus as we continue to develop to consider those things. Alpenscapes is here as a tool for developers, for owners associations, for individual property owners to feel like they can own that a little bit and be a part of the solution. I talk about climate change a lot. I don't want to bring doomsday in your house. I want to be solutions focused. This is what we're trying to do with all these tools we're presenting today. So we know what the challenge is, but we've created this partnership to enrich all of our messages and create a space where you can hit the easy button and go to one place for landscaping, not to multiple different places. Because if you want to landscape for Firewise, you're probably thinking about water and native species as well. So the Alpenscapes solution is simple, native and sustainable landscaping that thrives in Big Sky to help Big Sky thrive. And I think that means I'm passing it over to Jess, and I might have gone over one.
All right, so Lizzie did a great job at introducing us. So just to reiterate, we're 4 independent organizations that kind of just realized that we were all spreading a very similar message. We want sustainable landscapes. I was focused on the water side, Jen and Grow Wild being more focused on plants and biodiversity, and the fire department on your fire defensible spaces. We realized, why are we running so many different programs that are frankly confusing the community and making you feel like you had to choose between what you wanted your priority to be, when the reality is there are so many overlapping guidelines for all of our programs, we might as well just combine them. So like Lizzie said, we want to be a go-to resource, so the website is designed to walk you through all of the landscaping processes, whether you're starting from scratch or you're making little upgrades, whatever it might be. And we're all still offering our individual services. So the task force, we have a rebate program for water-wise fixtures. Jen can come point out all the weeds you have in your landscape. Fire department can give you tips on how to spruce up, no pun intended, your, sorry. Spruce up your landscape to make it safer. So we're all still offering all of those services, and ultimately, like we said, we want to be a resource, so just reach out. We're happy to modify. We've met with HOAs just to talk through solutions or give advice. It doesn't have to be this square thing. Just reach out. You have all of our individual emails. There's also an Alpenscapes info email. We're here to help, and we're here to be a resource. So now let's dive into a little bit more of the specifics. So I'm here to talk about how our landscapes impact water. So we know, like Lizzie mentioned, we have a water resource problem here in Big Sky. We know that we are in a very drought-prone, arid climate. We know that in the coming years, we're expected to see longer period of droughts, drier summers, and less snowpack, which snowpack is our primary water supply driver here in our community. So saving water is, we're kind of at the point where it's not just something you do, it's something that we have to do. It's no longer an option. We have seen a lot of really great studies that show us how landscapes are using so much water. The Big Sky Water Sewer District completed an updated source capacity update, and they mention in it that if we as a community cut down our landscapes to only be 500 square foot a yard, we could be saving 99% of our outdoor water use. And they took that 500 square feet into consideration. We know that we have animals, pets that need to use their lawn. You like to play lawn games, you have kids. We totally understand that a fully 100% native grass lawn or native plant lawn is not necessarily an option. You can have your cake and eat it too. So we know that native plants, they're already adapted to our arid climate, so we really want to push the use of these plants that are already not using as much water. You don't need to irrigate them as much, they're using what's already natural. Organic fertilizers, it's not just a water quantity issue, but a water quality issue. Native landscapes use less fertilizers and less non-organic mulches that are going to impact the quality of the Gallatin River, leaching less nitrates and phosphorus into our waterways. We also, back to the water, we know that our water use increases up to 56% just in the summer. So again, think about how much water you're saving just by cutting down on your heavy water loving grasses. So we really strive for that water use. And like I said, there's so much overlap in all of these needs. Having less plants around your house that are less flammable, that's not using water. Native plants that are going to be more adapted, not using water. So we're really striving for that.
So now onto plants. So first, a shameless plug. We do have a native plant sale. It's live on our website right now. You order online and pick up either your June batch or July batch. So shameless plug right there. So if you know me, some people call me the weed lady, but please call me the native plant lady now. It's better. So they're adapted. They're easy. I am the laziest gardener in the world because I want to be out either hiking the trails or riding my horses, and native plants are the bomb for that. It still requires maintenance, but a lot less water. Actually, native plants adapt, or, evolved without fertilizer. So less is more when it comes to that. And when we're talking about biodiversity and habitat health, I mean, we live in this incredible environment probably because we love the wildlife, and wildlife need native plants. Unlike the horticultural plants, natives provide the important energetic reserves, the nectar, the pollen, what our native insects, birds, wildlife evolved with. So when you have non-native species, Kentucky bluegrass lawns, it's like an ecological desert. You might as well just be pouring concrete and have a really well defensible home. But we love our plants, so switch to natives. They are just so much better for our environment. We are here to help with that. So one of the things that we have is a wonderful Crail Gardens at the Historic Crow Ranch. It is designed to inspire you to how you can make beautiful landscapes using native plants. And one thing we're very excited about building is what we're calling a fire-wise crevice garden. Abby and I visited Missoula County Department of Ecology and Extension, their gardens, and they had an incredible crevice garden. So basically, you're talking rocks designed really beautifully with appropriate native plants plugged here and there. As you can see on the left side, these plants are low growing, they're drought tolerant. So if those embers fall on there, if those plants burn, it's short. They're not the tall grasses. They don't have a lot of biomass. Changing our landscapes and how we think about them requires a paradigm shift. And it's not easy. I'm even fighting my husband at home because I'm getting ready to put in pea gravel, which is the best fire-wise mulch that we replaced all of the mulch at Crail Gardens with last fall. And he's like, no, I don't want to do it. And guess who gets to watch that video tonight? But it was already going to happen because I'm the gardener. But it's these little things. And one thing I think, when we talk, there are compromises to be had because, the fire department will be like, these are kind of the best practices. And when I meet with people, I understand our love for plants and wanting to have something beautiful around the home. So how can you find an appropriate compromise that meets your goals? Maybe instead of packing those plants right up against your house, you move them out into zone 2. And instead of making huge, these very large, densely packed gardens, make them more sparse, make them more low growing, more drought tolerant, things like that. So, it's not a one size fits all, and there's compromises to be made, but if we don't act, you're setting yourself up for a bad situation. So we're gonna build that this fall and celebrate it next spring. We hope you join us for that. And I think back to Lizzie.
Yeah, so that's kind of the concept behind Alpenscapes. We want it to be the go-to resource for everybody in the community. If there's ways we can improve it, we'd love that feedback. We want it to be an open discussion. So don't ever hesitate if you use the tool that we've created to come back to us and say, hey, you know what would be really, really helpful in the future if it was this. This partnership is honestly a labor of love. We all love working together, so it's pretty fun to do all the time. And I would like to shout out also to the Firelight HOA, who a couple months ago reached out to us at Alpenscapes. And this is just an example of what you could do as an HOA. We sat down with them and looked at design plans that they had drafted 15 years ago maybe, that they had not yet implemented. And we went in and helped them redline items and make sure that they were Alpenscaping, because they are going to invest as an HOA in their landscaping and they want to do it right. So we are willing to help guide that process for you as an owners association. Obviously, if you're a vast swath of single family homes, it's less applicable than if you're a condo owners association. Those condo owners associations I know have a lot more control over what the landscaping is. And so if there is a grand swath update, it's something we can work with you on. We look forward to continuing to work with Firelight and others for that reason, because the second, you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting your neighbors. And at the end of the day, that's creating a more resilient community. So we'd love to move it to question and answers for the group based on Alpenscapes or anything else. We have about 15 minutes for that, and then we'll roll into breakout sessions. So let's start with any questions anybody may have. Don't be shy. Oh, Janelle, great, Milo's just coming for you.
Where can I order the plants?
growwildmt.org/shop. So you just get on our website, hit the shop, lots of options, and pay attention. If it's June available, it's in the header, or July, and we do have different sizes. I got some bigger, but in a good but bad, I need to order earlier because native plants are really high demand right now. So I couldn't get as many of the big gallon containers. I also want to encourage you, many of our local landscaping companies do have a native section, so check those out and let them know if you're not finding what you want, because my job is to create demand. So the supply then comes.
Max.
Jen, how long did it take you to find a sweater that matched your color coordination for Grow Wild?
Just naturally attracted to green. So it comes my way.
Something, we'll go to Emma and while Milos brings that over, something we failed to share with you is that late this summer, Alpenscapes will be also, in addition to the website, publishing a guidebook that will be very visually appealing. A lot of the feedback we got from the website is that there's these great lists of plants and I have no idea what they look like. There's also feedback that people are very concerned that it's gonna look like Arizona and a bunch of rocks. Rocks are part of the element, but you can make beautiful rock things and you can add native plants to make it safe. So just to make sure we're clear about that. Go ahead, Emma.
Do many landscaper companies engage with you guys? I'm just gonna throw out one Valley of the Flowers. Do they work with you guys on Alpenscapes? And then I have another question.
So we aren't necessarily contracting with them.
Yeah.
We are connecting them, and we do have the landscapers a resource page. But I have a feeling more and more we will. And again, when landscapers hear I'm interested in, doing more fire-wise landscaping around my home, they're going to adapt and provide that for you. So don't hesitate to speak up. Plus, this guidebook is going to really outline a lot of the stuff that will help landowners, HOAs, and also the landscapers.
Yeah, as a consultant.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had was, are you going to do a weed pool again this year? Are you going to do more weed pools?
Yep.
Maybe?
So we have our normal Gallatin River weed pool, I want to say the 14th Abbey, and then we have our Big Sky Community Park on the 17th. We are also doing a hummocks and upland on June, what Abbey? 9. And then we're going to do an end of season at Michener Trails in September, date to be determined. And then we're also hoping to do see it and do something about it, because we get a lot of complaints, HOAs get a lot of complaints, And we're really encouraging people to, you know what, maybe neighborhood leaders, like see something, do something, see something, pull something. And we're here to help with that as well. Like if you have a neighborhood problem, we're happy to come out and work with you guys and do a little pulling. You know, we point out wildflowers as we do it, so we're very educational. Yeah. One other thing about Alpenscapes, we are going to have like a coffee with Alpenscapes during our Big Sky Wildflower Festival, July 8th through the 12th at Crail Gardens. I believe it's morning time. growwild.org events page. All the information will be up there.
Have you all thought of potentially putting like a Alpenscapes certified or certification out there?
So we have, and Jess might be able to speak to this a little bit better. You know, they did the trout-friendly landscaping. Big Sky's an interesting place for these kind of things.
We have thought about maybe having yard signs that are like, you know, to show off your Alpenscape landscape to try and get more folks onto the bandwagon. As far as like an actual certification, I don't really think we have the bandwagon or the bandwidth, thank you, for that. But we do offer, like the task force just recently hosted like an irrigation workshop with the city of Bozeman to help get more landscapers in the community. I think some of your folks were there. So we'll continue to offer and individually through our organizations those types of resources, but right now we're just too small to, I think, really offer that individually, but something to think about for sure.
And just, I know there's another question, but just a quick throwback, a hand raise. If we were to do an Alpenscape certification system, do you feel like that would be helpful for you as a resident and motivating for you and your neighbors? Or do you think not? So helpful, hand raised, not so much? Okay, cool, thanks. And I know there's a question back there. And then Liz will come to you after, but go ahead.
So I think it was last year you kind of had that bit about pollinators and trying to enforce or promote putting pollinator plants together. I was wondering if you thought about doing it for other wildlife habitats, like maybe songbirds or nutcrackers or deer and elk or something like that.
I love the way you think. So just for everyone, we did build a pollinator garden under the moose at Ouzel Falls. And literally the day we planted it one day with amazing volunteers. The next day we went to check on it and pollinators were already there. Like, you plant it, they will come. Also, we noticed in the fall that all the wildlife ate all our plants. So that's the thing. You know, everything has pros and cons. Native plants are meant to be eaten. And that is something to celebrate. If wildlife is eating your lawn or your landscape, you are doing it right. So know that, celebrate those bites. And also, more to come maybe on kind of wildlife. You know, wildlife appreciates a diversity of habitat. Wildflowers, forbs, shrubs, trees, open space, you know, dense packed areas. You know, and here's where those compromises take place. Dense trees are a wonderful shelter place for some wildlife, but what is that? Wildfire hazard. So there's pros and cons to everything. That's something we're kind of working on. We'll get there. And we are building more pollinator gardens to come. And truly, so for a landscape to be really healthy and biodiverse, you need 70% of the plants to be native in your landscape. Now, it doesn't mean you have to do it all at once. I'm telling you, you get a little pocket garden of native plants and then you get addicted to seeing what bees come and then you're like, I need more native plants. You know, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I saw a hawk moth, one of those beautiful hummingbird type hawk moths visit Crail Gardens. You know what I need more of? Bee moth. So just start little, keep growing, and we'll start working more on kind of other different type of habitats. And it's also very site specific because, you know, certain properties do well for, you know, if you're really shaded, it's really hard to grow some of these native plants that pollinators love because they like more sun. So pros and cons.
In this guide that's coming out, are you gonna have plants that like work well together?
Yes, so that's going to be part of it, and we're going to have some landscaping plans, so sort of some basic examples of like what you should have at zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. And then we're going to have talk about like the north side. That's everybody's problem. You know what's good there? Rock. And you know, sand. You know, in areas where you have a lot of moss, you know what you should do is aerate your lawn and add sand for good drainage. So we're going to have a lot of those tips in there. We literally are just in development, so kind of any feedback too helps us know what would be helpful for you. So don't hesitate to reach out and like, you know what, I have this problem. Let us know, and then see if we can incorporate that into the guidebook.
I'm like I want to be a gardener, but I'm not good at it. So I need to be told exactly what to do. And I will do it. I just need, and I can't afford someone to come do it. So I'm happy to do it, but I just need to know exactly like what will go together.
So that is also an opportunity. Join us at our open houses at Crail. Again, check out our events page. We host one June, July, and August. Come out. We'll walk around the gardens, we'll talk about things, you know, and you even bring pictures of your property. And what's even better is a Google Earth map, so we can have an aerial, and then we can talk about, well, this area is really shaded, so this is what plants do well. And if there's one thing about being a gardener, is like you really have to be a scientist in that you experiment. You try stuff, you see what works, great, keep going. You see what doesn't work, whoops. Okay, fail, don't repeat that, learn your lessons. And that's the joy of gardening. And it's, you know, this is the most challenging location. You're in a really tough zone, your growing season is that long, so you gotta just go for it. So yeah, come visit us at our open houses and we'll chat more.
Well, thank you to the Alpenscapes team. It's been a genuine joy working with you ladies and with the fire department, and thank you guys for the questions. Right now, we are a little dispersed through the room. We are going to go into breakout sessions next. So what I'd like you to do before I put the questions up on the screen that we're going to answer kind of in a breakout groups is I'd love to consolidate us a little bit. So if you are at a table with less than, let's go with 4 people, find some buddies and move your booty. All right, as your introductions wrap up, I love that you're already talking. I'd like to just frame the questions I want each table to address. So every single breakout group is going to go ahead and have the same conversation and answer the same 4 questions. So all 4 of these questions you can discuss amongst your table. You have 45 minutes to do so. There is a white sheet of paper that went on your table. You can nominate a group stenographer to consolidate the information you compile. And what we really are looking for at the end of this is we're going to come together and write down a top idea from each question that came away from your table. So you can take some notes about the top 2 or 3 things from each question that you guys come up with answers as. And then at the end, you know, you have a couple options. If another table says the same thing as you make sure that you have an opportunity to have something new to add to the group when we come back together and address what we're talking about. So the 4 questions are the following that you're going to discuss for the next 45 minutes. Looking at your owner's association or managed properties, what current environmental vulnerabilities exist? Is it building materials, vegetation, limited road access, water use? What exists as a challenge environmentally and creates vulnerability there? Question 2 is what barriers exist, whether they're social, financial, or awareness, to implementing these environmentally resilient practices which we've discussed here today. So take all the learnings from today, synthesize that, and come into a space about how we can overcome those together. The third question is how can your HOA or property team support or integrate with existing resources like the Neighborhood Ambassador Program or utilizing Alpenscapes for property assessment? Something we didn't touch too much on during the Alpenscapes presentation is all 3 other organizations besides SNO have property assessments where Jen or Jess or the fire department will physically come out onto your property and help you assess your invasive species, your native species, your water conservation and your turf efforts, and your wildfire defensible space. On the Alpenscapes website, there is a link to book all of those, so please feel free to go ahead and do so. Those are free assessments that we are willing to do to come out on your property, so you don't just get all this information and not understand how it exactly applies to you. The fourth question is the most important today. I wanted to call this a workshop and not a presentation or a class or whatever. I want you guys to walk away from this meeting today feeling empowered to take action. Because if we are learning the things and not taking the action, it's gonna fall flat. So I really want this to be a point where you feel enfranchised to take action. If you've had a win in your personal property or on a property you're aware of, share that with the group. It might inspire someone else. This is not just about coming up with possible future actions, it's what's already working. Something we see in the survey we send out when you guys register is the fact that a lot of people don't think they're very far on their sustainability journey. Then when we get in this room and we have this conversation, and we did this last year, we start realizing that everybody's already taking some significant steps in the right direction. And we want that to continue. So you need to find those next attainable, actionable items. So talk about wins that you've seen, talk about things that you hope to do and that are feasible. So really, what are 2 to 3 feasible, high-impact actions your HOA or as a property owner or as a property management team could take within the next 6 months? These are the 4 questions that I want you to come up with 3 top answers to as a group in the next 45 minutes. We'll spend the last 15 minutes of this session coming back together, doing a quick top line, what are these things that you guys came together with? This will all come back to you in a follow-up email. You'll get a follow-up survey tomorrow, and we'll do a couple little last takeaways at the end. But I want this to be a really fruitful conversation. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be honest. Again, there are no stupid questions. We've kind of tried to make sure some of our representatives who have spoken today have popped into your conversations. So if you are looking for a specific expert to address something that you're concerned about, don't hesitate to find them if they're not already at your table. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, get to chatting.
So we have these videos that the Alpenscapes partners
I don't see a problem here.
All right, what we'll do is we'll go through each question one by one, and we'll go to each table. So every table will go through question 1, every table will go through question 2. We're gonna try to do this expediently. We do not wanna waste any more of your time, and I am 15 minutes between you and a nice adult beverage. I'm not unrealistic about where our goals are here. And you've been sitting here for the last 3 hours and 45 minutes very patiently and very engaged, and I am incredibly grateful for you guys, so thank you. So with that being said, you can identify somebody in your group to be your kind of group announcer, and I will start with the group immediately in front of me with question number 1, looking at our current environmental vulnerabilities that exist. What were your top couple?
Wildfire, educating the community, and building materials.
Great answer. All right, this group, same question. Your answers.
One of our associations doesn't have every home in an association, and changing the covenants to change some of the exteriors of these homes is hard. And then for the Yellowstone Club, there's limited access roads, exit points.
All right, this group.
Hi, we were taking a 20,000 foot view here, so we said everything. Different communities have different vulnerabilities. Aspen Groves has a lot of trees. cascade, it would be an evacuation situation we would be most worried about. So that's, yeah. Did I answer that?
Yep.
Great, great.
Perfect. This group, Ms. McFadden.
Road access anywhere really in town, old buildings without sprinkler systems, and outdated building materials and roofs.
Fantastic. Coming to the center of the room, who's my group speaker?
There's a lot of vegetation around a lot of homes. There's a lot of wooden homes with wooden decks, and there's a lot of vacant lots in the neighborhood that may not be as incentivized to do cleanup.
And then last but not least, Mr. Kadri.
We had a few vegetation, specifically neighboring properties that maybe aren't within our HOA but have vulnerabilities. Grasses growing up against buildings. We also said building materials. We talked about decks a lot. I think that's a big vulnerability. And then water availability for older homes.
Great one. Question number 2, we focused on barriers that exist, particularly the social, financial, and the awareness. Who am I talking to in this group right now? Sorry. It's been a long day, guys.
Financial, having low-cost alternatives. Again, lack of education for the community. And social awareness for what we call newbies. So people who are moving from other places that they can't have what they had where they came from here.
I think she just hit on a really good one that we don't talk about a lot because as we've discussed today, there's a lot of familiar faces in this room, which is awesome. How do we get more newbies in the room? Good question. Invite a friend the next time.
We also said education, limited contractors to get some of this work done, and also changing guidelines for insurance. So sometimes like a roof will be replaced within 5 years, and then 5 years later, the guideline changed. So getting that, and also getting the owner's HOA and developer on the same page.
There are some people who have financial barriers. And then how to overcome that would be maybe incentivizing people to get the work done.
Great. Awesome answer.
Money, limited contractors, labor, human factor, encountering people who don't want to educate themselves on what to do.
Great.
With the amount of rentals that are around, there may be a lack of as much emotional or financial investment in the home itself. There's a cost related to it, and finding and coordinating material removal is difficult.
Great point. Materials removal can be a big challenge.
You guys said them all. I think the only one was bylaws, changing bylaws, and then also people are grandfathered in even though bylaws change.
Great. Awesome. All right, back to group number 1 with question number 3, which was how do we support or integrate with existing resources in an effective manner?
Platform to share information and getting community involvement.
Yeah. Taryn just reminded me there's a great place to learn nerdy things about building science in Bozeman. Every first Thursday of the month at 6 p.m., there's a really nerdy group of us that get together for an event called Building Science and Beers. Highly recommend if you like beer. The website is
we're actively implementing things already, so clearing and cutting and forest management, using native landscaping, and assessing and managing homeowners' water usage.
fantastic. I'm gonna expedite and do this.
Promote safety during the building process, during application, reevaluate design guidelines, and maybe have the fire department attend HOA meetings to inform residents of the benefits.
HOA block parties, but don't call them that. Maybe something more fun.
Very good point.
I'm gonna, timing on education, we talked about, like if you're going to buy new plants, educating the person at the Big Sky Garden Center, or if you need a new roof, doing that. And then I'm gonna take something we said in 4 for here, but a packet for new homeowners or a new building, like, you know, it's like you buy a home and then you get this packet of what to do.
Fantastic. I love that we've talked about that. Also, fun fact, as we're making this guidebook with Alpenscapes, we are also going to create tear sheets that we're going to put at the Big Sky Nursery and Big Sky Landscaping for you to utilize. When you go there, you can know what to buy.
One thing we came up with was sharing landscaping bylaws between all of our HOAs. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we can all take from each other. And another one was a financial incentive. So you actually get a reduction in your HOA dues if you do the work.
All right, last question. What are your 2 to 3 feasible high impact actions? Jess, also I want to call out Jess's stenographering for the group, so thank you, Jess. And I know we're talking very fast, so you're doing fabulously.
Update building materials for fire hardening purposes. Politely tell homeowners no, that they can't have certain things, and educate them why and what they should have better. And sustainable solutions.
We said do a welcome to Big Sky video, kind of make it a parody to something serious. So like, if you leave the trash outside, what's gonna happen? The bear will eat it, or the bear won't eat it, or something like that. And then also specifically for one of our associations, fix the seed mixture, because apparently it is a fast-growing material and it's a fire hazard. So
that's a good one.
Request the fire chief to assess neighborhoods to give suggestions to make it more fire resistant. Implement a drip system and meter wells in a neighborhood that aren't serviced by our water district.
I'm really looking forward to connecting some of our contractors with Alpenscapes resources, and because there's a lot of ground that the residential portfolio covers in landscaping, so I'll be looking forward to that. And then BSOA is, on the BSOA side of things, they're gonna do more on the social media side of things and like residential education.
My name is Lisa. I'm from BSOA. I do the architectural review. We also send out a newsletter as well. We have 2,400 people we have 2,400 doors in our jurisdiction, and so we could certainly send out something in the newsletter, letting people know about Alpenscapes and Neighborhood Ambassador and all that stuff as well.
Awesome. Shout out to Lisa and her team at BSOA, because in January, SNO, along with the Gallatin River Task Force and Big Sky Resort, worked on a collaborative effort to change statewide code and legislation based on spa and hot tub draining for short-term rentals. So the BSOA put that in their newsletter, and it got to 2,400 people, and I got a lot of phone calls the next day, which is totally the point. But if you didn't know, before, when you had a short-term rental in the entire state of Montana, every single turnover, whether it was 2 days or a week, you had to fully drain a spa and refill it. So imagine, Milos did all the math. I'm not the math person. But I want to say we gathered data, and we found that if everybody instituted the change, and you still do need to do occasional drainages, of course, but if you were to use chemicals and adjust accordingly, that we could actually be saving 7 to 8 million gallons a year in Big Sky alone. So if you know people who property manage for short-term rentals, make sure they know about it, connect them with me, I can send them the information. But shout out to Lisa's team, because that went in the BSOA newsletter, and we got a lot of response from that. So.
We said the same thing, share success stories and make sure there's social pressure, because if everybody's doing it, then more people might want to do it. HOA boards and landscapers have a more in-depth conversation on what to do in creating a 5-year plan for budget, constant education, and then have BizRad require minimum amount of environmental resilient practices in order for people to get money.
Great one. Round us out, Mr. Kadri.
So we came up with little things to start. So flashing at the deck to siding interface was one thing. We looked into flame-resistant stain for decking materials, so that exists out there. We're looking to the fire department for some guidance on which one's best, and then adding mesh and figuring out where to source it, because it's kind of tough to find.
To the mesh point, I have talked to the Big Sky Fire Department about something I think would be really productive. If we were to put, like, find a big stash of 1/8" mesh, have it at Ace Hardware, and have it subsidized, where you can walk in and be like, I need a 2-foot by 2-foot thing because I have 15 holes in the side of my house or vents or whatever, and then you spend about an hour of your Saturday going out and doing a little housework. But something we don't talk about a lot, and something I think that gets lost in this conversation about sustainability as a whole, but particularly with resilience. Everybody, when they think about creating a more resilient building, thinks about like a grade A roof. And they think about, oh my gosh, I'm about to spend 6 figures to fix this problem. There are small, actionable items that everybody can take. I think the 1/8" mesh is a perfect example, and if we were to make it free and at Ace and have a big poster there, I don't know why we're not doing that yet, but I think it's probably a good idea. Anyways, so those are kind of the things. I think we can see some consistencies throughout the conversation today, and I can't express my gratitude enough for you all being here. Thank you to Jess for stenographering. The last 2 slides I've got for you, we're almost out of here. Today you learned about a lot of tools. We talked about the Big Sky Fire Department. They have a fire adapted hub online. It is the weirdest URL you will ever find. Just Google Big Sky Fire Adapted Hub. Alpenscapes.org is there for you. There will be a forthcoming guidebook later this year. BuildBetterBigSky.com is not something we've touched on. It is a collaborative effort led by the Buildings and Energy team. Taryn, shout out, is here. That SNO what do? We lead it every month, facilitate it? I'm losing my words. Every month, once a month, we meet with architects, builders, and folks who work on households to understand how we can improve buildings and energy in Big Sky. Out of that came a website that's a free resource for all of you and anybody you know who's renovating or building anew. It includes energy efficiency, it includes water conservation, it includes fire adaptedness. You can go onto this website and learn all about how to make your home more resilient for free. There is an incentives page on it. It links to all of the funding that's currently available for federal rebates, local rebates, etc. Today is the first day we're announcing the fact that we are launching a residential home energy audit subsidy. This subsidy will subsidize household energy audits that are much more in-depth than the one you can get for free from Northwestern Energy, because that does exist. It will give you a blower door test, thermal imaging to understand the integrity of your building envelope and understand how you can better create a space that you have to heat less. Because when your house is a colander, you're kind of heating the outdoors. When your house has a better building envelope, the heat wants to stay inside and your utilities are going to go down. That will be on the website by the end of this week. There is a 1-pager in your packet that has information about it that will send you to the right place. SNO is a resource. You can always come to us with questions. We don't always have all the answers. I am a jack of all trades. I do know a lot of people who are experts in their field. I will send you to the right one. Gallatin River Task Force is exceptional with river health and water conservation. Grow Wild does a kick-ass job educating us about invasive species and native species. And then we have the Neighborhood Ambassadors Program. I know we all need another volunteering opportunity, like we probably need a hole in our head. The reason you're here today is because you're an involved person. So if it ain't you, maybe Talk to your neighbor who might have the bandwidth to go to be a neighborhood ambassador. Talk to the social butterfly that isn't already really involved. Get them involved in the ambassador program. It's such a great opportunity to be an impactful neighbor and have a good outcome for the resilience of our community. Those are some of the tools. Lastly, I don't like thank you slides for the last slide. I think they're silly and a waste of your time. My last slide is always your commitment. What are you walking away here from with? What are those 2 to 3 actions you can do to commit to in the next 6 months, whether it's on your HOA level or on a personal level? I'm gonna give you the first one right away. There is no reason everybody should not get their phone out right now and take this QR code. To Mel's point, this is the QR code for Everbridge. Everbridge is our community emergency management notification system. If there is a flood, if there is a fire, if there is a red flag warning, the county will automatically send you a notification to let you know what that is. You can opt into certain things and opt out of certain things. It is a harmless thing to have, and it will make you less of a liability in the case of an evacuation and more of an asset. We want to make sure that every resident in Big Sky has this. If you run a business, build this into your business training. This should be in your employee workbook. It should be in every employee workbook. This is non-negotiable. I met with the folks from Jasper a couple months ago in Victoria, British Columbia at a sustainable tourism conference. Something they have instituted after their massive wildfires is carte blanche. Their chamber supports every business in getting the employee training to include this QR code to sign up for community notifications. That means everybody who's in a tourist-facing business in the case of an emergency can be, the person playing telephone and let people know who wouldn't otherwise be signed up for it to be notified about what their options are. If you think of creative ways to do this and to communicate to people and to engage people and being a part of the solution, we will build a more resilient community. You might have seen me present in other places. I like talking about consumption and waste and transportation and energy and buildings, but you will hear my tone change when I talk about this. I've been in a car with a wildfire behind me in an evacuation. It is not fun. Be part of the solution and create community to do it. It's a great opportunity to do it, and it's an awesome, empowering thing. So thank you guys.